They studied your silence like it was a riddle they couldn't solve. While you walked freely through the days, untouchable and unmoved, those who plotted in shadow were unraveling faster than they could regroup. Their confusion wasn't rooted in your power, it stemmed from their inability to understand how someone they never accounted for could be so untouchably blessed. You weren't reacting to their chaos. You were already beyond it. Plans drawn in secret chambers, charted with precision and malice, disintegrated the moment they touched your orbit. What they never understood is that you weren't built to bend beneath pressure, you were crafted by a force that turns pressure into purpose. Their systems cracked under the weight of their own schemes, and still you remained, a walking contradiction to their expectations. While they called upon forces they barely understood, thinking they could bend the unseen to their will, those very energies turned against them like lightning rebounding from a mirror. The rules they thought governed the unseen world? They never applied to you. Because you're not part of their equation, you are the variable that breaks their math. Every attempt to sabotage your path only carved it deeper, straighter, and wider. Not because of coincidence. Not because of luck. But because your existence is aligned with something they can't comprehend. What they built to destroy you only served as scaffolding for your rise. Their traps became your stepping stones. Their chaos, your clarity. They thought they could erase you. Rewrite your story with endings they authored. But they never grasped that your story was never written in ink, it was etched in something older, louder, and impossible to smudge. Their confusion wasn't why you survived, it was how you thrived. Flourished. Glowed brighter after every attack. That's what broke them. Behind closed doors, they whisper questions they're too afraid to voice aloud. How did we miss this? How did all of it fall apart? The truth gnaws at them. No amount of calculation, summoning, or strategy could override the elemental protection around you. Not a wall. Not a shield. But a natural law. A spiritual constant. A living immunity. And now, while they bury the evidence of their defeat, you walk into the light they tried to block from you. Not just unscathed, but transformed. Not just standing, but soaring. What was meant to erase you has only carved your name deeper into the fabric of the world. And you didn't even have to lift a finger. You're not just resilient, you are the embodiment of quiet evolution, transforming in the background while the world assumed you were still. As they scrambled to manipulate variables they could barely comprehend, something far more intricate was unfolding within you. Not in loud declarations or obvious breakthroughs, but in the subtleties. In the instincts you didn't question. In the paths you didn't walk without even knowing why. What looked like chance was actually a design encoded in layers they never had access to. Each time your presence tensed in the company of someone others trusted without hesitation, something ancient within you was filtering out interference. It wasn't logic. It wasn't paranoia. It was the hidden architecture of your essence, sensing the vibrations of sabotage long before it breached the surface. And those moments you felt compelled to turn away without explanation? That was your inner axis shifting away from pre-laid traps, recalibrating your trajectory in real time with no external data, just internal truth. The grandeur of this unfolding wasn't loud. It was surgical. Unseen brilliance operating behind the veil. Every move they made to restrict you was absorbed, repurposed, and transmuted into fuel for something far larger. Their efforts were never stopping you. They were sharpening you. Unknowingly crafting the edges of a capability they would never be able to contain once it revealed itself. Their strategy, once praised as foolproof, began to buckle under the weight of its own arrogance. They couldn't comprehend how their own tactics were backfiring, not due to error, but due to a miscalculation at the root of their assumptions. You weren't reactive. You were pre-aligned with the very forces they were trying to distort. Their interference wasn't pollution, it became your contrast, making your clarity unbearable for them to watch. And then came the internal collapse. The one place to steady you up close began to unravel under pressure. Their training couldn't hold up against the raw perceptiveness radiating from your silence. What once seemed like subtle manipulation was now painfully obvious, exposed by nothing more than your expanding awareness. The false mask slipped, not through confrontation, but through inevitability. Encrypted transmissions behind closed channels shifted tone from triumphant to terrified. They were watching their hand-picked emissary crumble, unable to maintain the illusion. You hadn't called them out. You didn't need to. The truth they buried under layers of deceit had risen on its own, illuminating everything they tried to keep in shadow. Exposure wasn't an act of war. It was a natural consequence. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late to retreat. The collapse wasn't caused by outside force, it bloomed from within. Their entire framework, once so tightly held, dissolved under its own contradictions. Every attempt to define your story turned into a mirror, reflecting only their fear back at them. And still, you moved forward with calm, clear, untouched by the storm they created. Perception-shattering clarity surrounds your field like a living algorithm, decoding falsehoods before they can finish forming. Words spoken with hidden motives are stripped bare mid-sentence. Tactics built on centuries of psychological exploitation disintegrate in real time. The agent embedded closest to you has begun reporting phenomena they cannot rationally explain, as if their mental scripts are being rewritten by an unseen intelligence that outpaces their every move. In the realm of career sabotage, something unprecedented is happening. Their seasoned disruptor, whose specialty was to fracture reputations and scatter trajectories, found themselves documenting reversals that made no logical sense. With each calculated derailment, outcomes improved instead of crumbling. They watched with growing alarm as removed opportunities multiplied, and detours evolved into breakthroughs with a speed that mocked their training. A disturbing realization began to take hold among those orchestrating your downfall. External systems seemed to bend to accommodate your stability. What they mistook for luck revealed itself as precision. The one assigned to collapse your financial blueprint, an architect of energetic collapse and ruin, found themselves facing a reality that refused to obey. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Every stratagem they unleashed to restrict your flow became a trigger for abundance. Patterns that typically brought destruction reversed course entirely, opening doors rather than sealing them. Where scarcity was intended, increase emerged. Their understanding of outcomes buckled beneath the evidence. You weren't just surviving. You were converting harm into legacy, obstacles into elevation. Their language changed. Reports stopped sounding strategic and began resembling confessions. Shock gave way to disbelief as engineered disruptions birthed alignments they could neither predict nor reverse. There was a growing sense that they had disturbed a structure that existed before their names were ever spoken, and that this structure was now shifting. What terrified them most wasn't what they could see, it was what began to ripple in the unseen. Events too seamless to dismiss began accumulating. No longer accidents. No longer random. Encounters, signs, echoes of things not spoken aloud. One of them, once confident, now fragmented, spoke of vivid encounters during sleep that weren't dreams but confrontations. Not with strangers. With something that knew them deeply, unforgivingly. The night stopped being a place of rest. They became chambers of reckoning. In those silent hours, their minds were visited by memories they hadn't accessed in decades, wounds buried so deep no one alive could have known. Yet something did. Something that whispered in tones they'd never heard but immediately recognized. Something that held no mercy, only mirrors. And each mirror showed a truth they had long tried to outrun. There are some who walk this world cloaked in borrowed power, thinking the source of their strength lies in secrecy, legacy, or ritual. But when confronted by something greater than lineage, when standing before a force not inherited, but divinely generated, the cracks begin to form. One individual, once steeped in confidence, found themselves spiraling into obsession with ancestral records. Not out of curiosity, but compulsion. What they discovered buried in the silence of generations unraveled the illusion of invincibility that had propped up their convictions. The deeper they probed into their origins, the more their narrative fragmented. Patterns emerged, disturbing, cyclical, and precise. Whenever power had been misused under the guise of mastery, consequences followed with uncanny consistency. The retribution didn't always strike immediately, but when it came, it was exact. Something unseen had been keeping record, and it moved with a precision far beyond earthly justice. Within sacred chambers, this realization was whispered in tones usually reserved for prophecy. Whatever governed the backlash was older than their knowledge, and far less forgiving. One practitioner, whose arrogance had driven them across continents in search of rare instruments for advanced spiritual interference, began unraveling in their own space. Physical laws bent like softened glass. Familiar objects behaved like strangers. Their world, once so meticulously controlled, started slipping. Lights flickered without source. Screens glitched in rhythm with their breath. Reality didn't collapse all at once, it twisted gradually, making them question which part of existence was still theirs to claim. Those seated in leadership began noticing the trend. Something was uncoiling, tightening around their enterprise with invisible teeth. But pride kept them deaf to retreat. They had already traded caution for dominion. Now, surrounded by warnings wrapped in silence, they chose escalation. Not out of bravery, but fear of disappointing those whose demands could not be refused. Instead of humility, they answered with overreach. Instead of pause, they issued orders to deepen the strike. When their conventional strategies dissolved like smoke, they broke the final seals. No longer content with tactics drawn from known methods, they breached into regions of spirit that many refused to acknowledge even in whispers. They weren't just attacking a single path. They aimed for the connections, the ones who mattered to you, the lives orbiting your presence. Through acts soaked in desperation, they pried open doors meant to remain sealed. These new efforts weren't strategies, they were ruptures. The kind that ripple through timelines and taint dimensions. The group had crossed into realms that don't forgive easily. And what they triggered wasn't reaction, it was awakening. They thought they were escalating. In truth, they were pulling a thread that unraveled the very grid of their influence. They weren't amplifying their reach. They were dissolving the foundation beneath it. The collateral damage wasn't yours to carry. It recoiled directly back into the hands that unleashed it. For every unsanctioned breach, a resonance struck them in return. Not with fire. Not with fury. But with mirrors. Mirrors that showed every compromise, every deception, and every unacknowledged truth they buried to maintain control. Their legacy began devouring itself. And in the silence that followed, you stood, not untouched, but transformed. Not just alive, but ascendant. Certain forces were never meant to be awakened, let alone negotiated with. And yet, in their hunger for dominion, they reached for what should have remained untouched. They whispered incantations and dialects lost before time could record them, thinking they could dictate terms to forces that don't acknowledge human hierarchy. What followed wasn't surprise, it was the predictable price of arrogance. The energies they beckoned didn't bend, they consumed. The cost wasn't theoretical. It was immediate, exact, and merciless. Your reality warped under the weight of their interference. But this wasn't chaos, it was resistance in disguise. Days became cluttered with misfires. The tools you relied on glitched without reason. People closest to you suddenly turned distant. Your vitality thinned, your dreams grew heavy, restless. Yet every obstacle they embedded in your path was mapped with strategic cruelty, tailored not to destroy in a single strike but to exhaust you inch by inch. They thought you would fray quietly. They were wrong. What they mistook for success was the system allowing its adversaries to keep digging. Every malicious move, every soul harmed in their pursuit of you, was being added to a growing spiritual ledger. This wasn't retaliation, it was arithmetic. The universe doesn't forget. And the deeper they went, the more they bound themselves to a consequence they thought they could outrun. Their strategy wasn't dismantling you. It was building a case against them. Then came the turning point. The moment the very tools they used began rejecting them. The beings they once summoned with confidence now returned with demands too steep to fulfill. Rituals began collapsing mid-process. Offerings that once sufficed became obsolete. What once required energy now demanded presence, then blood, then something even darker. Their resources, once vast and far-reaching, began bleeding out in every direction, without cause or control. And their own vitality began slipping with it. Those tasked with crushing your rise in the world of commerce found themselves at war with a phantom force. Projects unraveled under their fingertips. Clients turned skeptical overnight. And no amount of charm, silence, or explanation could stop the leaks. The foundation of their credibility, carefully constructed over decades, began crumbling from beneath. It wasn't sabotage, it was exposure. They weren't being hunted. They were being seen. The tables didn't turn, they collapsed completely. The force they summoned with confidence was no longer a tool, no longer a servant, no longer under command. It had shifted roles, and they were now its prey. It moved with purpose, not chaos, tailored vengeance that moved through their ranks like a surgical flame. This wasn't accidental backlash. It was deliberate targeting, carried out with the eerie precision of something that understood not only what they'd done, but why they had done it. One by one, they disappeared. And before they vanished, the message was always the same: it knows. Not in fragments. Not in whispers. In full detail. Every infraction, every bribe, every silenced victim. The architects of destruction now found themselves under microscopic judgment so tailored it felt like their very consciousness was being read aloud. Their past crimes didn't remain hidden in vaults or memories, they surfaced with force. And the circle of accountability wasn't small. Everyone complicit found themselves listed for reckoning. While this orchestration of collapse unfolded, another transformation was quietly taking place, yours. The changes felt like clarity, like intuition sharpening into near clairvoyance. What others chalked up to self-awareness was something far deeper. You began seeing beneath the surface of conversations. You started avoiding hazards before they had even formed. Unfolding events bent in your favor in ways that looked accidental to outsiders but carried unmistakable design. What you once thought were personal breakthroughs were actually calibrations. The disciplines you practiced, whether stillness, reflection, or prayer, weren't just inner work. They were unlocking sequences. These rituals activated protection codes embedded into your awareness long before you entered this lifetime. The peace you cultivated was becoming a shield. The kindness you extended was becoming reinforcement. And the alignment you pursued was awakening guardians who only respond to specific vibrational thresholds. On the other side, their confusion was turning into dread. The more they attacked, the more refined your resonance became. Plans designed to destabilize you began ricocheting into fortuitous shifts. Obstructions morphed into initiations. People sent to mislead you instead found themselves transformed by your presence. What they tried to bury you with became the soil that bloomed your influence. Their rulebook no longer applied to you. What shattered their operation was the moment they realized that you didn't need informants, you had direct access. Without tapping phones or decoding files, you began to receive waves of insight that pierced through layers of concealment. You could sense their structure, their inner workings, even their fallback strategies. You were mapping networks they believed impenetrable. The boundaries they trusted were dissolving under the weight of your increasing awareness. And then the flood came. Security systems failed not from hacking, but from exposure. Accounts were being traced without traces. Hidden locations were no longer hidden. Ties to systems of influence were no longer deniable. The fear was no longer about being stopped, it was about being fully seen. Every secret they fought to keep began rising like smoke under a spotlight they couldn't extinguish. And they knew their end didn't come from an enemy, it came from the very truth they tried to erase. The revelations that began streaming into your awareness weren't coming from witnesses, informants, or intercepted transmissions. They were arriving from a plane of memory untouched by time, etched into the fabric of existence itself. You were interfacing directly with the divine registry of all things, absorbing the encoded record of every silent vow, hidden betrayal, and buried act ever committed. Ironically, the force they had summoned to sever your spirit became the unwilling courier of truth, offering full disclosure not by choice, but by the inescapable rules of the cosmos. Scrambling for an escape hatch, the last of their commanders begged for a negotiation. Anything. Terms. Offerings. Retreat. But nothing could be traded for mercy they were never owed. There was no courtroom to enter. No deal to strike. Because this wasn't punishment by vendetta. This was resolution. The kind that answers not to fear or favor, but to equilibrium. And what protected you wasn't interested in bartering. It existed to complete a cycle long overdue for closure. This was not revenge, it was removal. Not simply of the people, but of the architecture. Entire support systems constructed through distortion were being deconstructed with exactitude. Bonds forged in coercion disintegrated. Alliances kept through silence fractured. All mechanisms that allowed their dominance to thrive were collapsing at their core, not by attack, but by structural rejection from the fabric of the unseen. The being at the center of this unraveling wasn't what they assumed. It wasn't a weapon to wield, but a sentinel bound to divine ordinance. Its true function hadn't been destruction, it was enforcement. And by invoking its presence without understanding its domain, they signed the spiritual equivalent of a confession. Its allegiance wasn't up for debate. It answered to universal sovereignty. Its justice wasn't swayed by allegiance, only by alignment. What became painfully clear too late was that certain entities act as auditors of misused spiritual economies. These weren't mercenaries, they were regulators. And by initiating contact, the summoners unknowingly triggered a formal audit of their actions. The entity began reclaiming what had been taken and redistributing what was blocked, restoring balance through methods far beyond what human logic could anticipate or survive. The execution wasn't chaotic. It was mathematical. Their wards eroded like salt in boiling water. Their sanctuaries collapsed without warning. Their protective sigils bled energy until they became hollow symbols. The very codes that once defended them had expired, and now they were standing exposed in a realm they thought they ruled, only to realize they had been renting space from powers that had never truly given them dominion. What surged through your life wasn't coincidence, it was reclamation. Every suppressed talent began reawakening. What had once been stalled now surged forward with a velocity that broke every barrier they once erected. Plans they had derailed were reborn in higher forms. What they had tried to erase was rewritten in permanent ink, underlined by destiny itself. You weren't just being healed. You were being restored, with interest. You are the one whose presence invokes restructuring in every system built on deception. While they expected chaos and retaliation, what they encountered instead was something far more calculated, exposure wrapped in legitimacy. Sensitive records, once locked beneath layers of corruption, began arriving in the inboxes of elite legal task forces who specialized in cases most dared not approach. The force they believed to be otherworldly terror had adapted to human frameworks with stunning precision, ensuring every consequence unfolded with undeniable legality and unshakable evidence. But nothing disoriented them more than realizing their so-called weapon had never been theirs to command. The entity hadn't simply defected, it had been embedded with purpose, operating as an extension of your guardians since the beginning. Their rituals weren't recruitment. They were authorization forms, unlocking direct access to their operation and turning their own tools into mechanisms of internal sabotage. They had unknowingly been funding the very operation that dismantled them. Each piece of intelligence disclosed to the entity had been seamlessly transmitted to a divine security protocol aligned with your journey. Every strategic conversation, every hidden vulnerability confessed in what they believed were sealed circles, was promptly neutralized and repurposed as a breach point. Their resources became the fuel for your acceleration, their secrets the blueprint of their collapse. In a final, desperate scramble to grasp what they had awakened, they pored over manuscripts forgotten by time. What they found broke the illusion entirely. They hadn't summoned a destroyer. They had awakened an executor whose sole charge was the correction of imbalance. It didn't deal in chaos. It enforced alignment. And its jurisdiction extended across dimensions, especially when innocent lives were manipulated through stolen wisdom. Unbeknownst to them, you had already been cataloged under an elevated classification, one reserved for beings carrying missions vital to global transition. Your blueprint had triggered protection long before they knew your name. The moment their interference entered your orbit, safeguards activated, pulling interdimensional specialists into position. Their aggression wasn't just misguided, it was unauthorized tampering with a reality they didn't have clearance to touch. Their rituals had been intercepted, documented, and preserved, not for retribution, but for adjudication under an authority that does not err. Each attempt to block your path became evidence in a process they had unknowingly submitted themselves to. This wasn't revenge, it was structure responding. They weren't struck down out of emotion, but eliminated through precision legal action across planes they never bothered to respect.